My name is Carrie Yavuz. I'm 44 years old. I'm Scottish. I live in the Highlands of Scotland. I'm an educational psychologist and my husband is a nurse. And I'm the mum of 3 children, and I lost one child to HDFN 12 years ago. When I was pregnant with my first child, who is now 14, I think it was a very straightforward, very easy pregnancy. And when he was 2 years old, I got pregnant again. Then I received just a slip through the post from the blood transfusion service to say that I have anti-Kell antibodies in my blood, that they were picked up in my bloods at booking when I was pregnant. And it said on the slip of paper, "This may affect your baby." At that stage, I had absolutely no idea of how serious this was. I naively presumed that the health professionals knew. It was much further down the line that I realised that this is not something that local teams are used to dealing with. At 26 weeks, it recorded an elevated blood flow. So my obstetrician said that she would need to go away and speak with fetal medicine in Glasgow, and she would be back in touch with me. She said they're going to assess you and probably do an in utero transfusion. So I said okay. I had lots of questions. I didn't know what was happening, what the procedure would be. We wondered also, why did we have to wait? But then over the weekend I started feeling that my baby was moving less, and by the Wednesday morning I had no movement at all. So I called my local obstetrician and she said, okay, come into the hospital, and they did a scan and said, really sorry, but there's no heartbeat, your baby hasn't survived. I still didn't understand why this had happened. I now know through the research that I've done that anti-Kell antibodies, the kind that I have, are very unpredictable, so that they can, that things can deteriorate very quickly. I now know that. I didn't know that at the time. Otherwise, I would have fought to be seen sooner and to be treated sooner. I would have made sure that happened. I would have been able to advocate for myself. So we took a good amount of time to think about, whether we wanted to try again for another baby and what might happen. I actually ended up getting pregnant sooner than I thought I would be pregnant, which was the following year, the year after we'd lost our baby. And we had a plan in place that the MCA Dopplers would happen every week instead of every fortnight. There was a lot of anxiety involved in that pregnancy. There was a lot of unknowns. I had educated myself a lot, but I still wasn't sure whether this pregnancy was going to have a successful outcome. When I went in at 35 weeks, the sonographer informed me that they just got the results of my last blood draw, and they decided that at that point that I was just to come in and be induced, and we're just going to get this baby born. He was okay, and he was being looked after. On day 5, he was taken off phototherapy lights, and then we got to go home. So yeah, everybody was a bit shocked, I think, that the pregnancy was so successful. My obstetrician basically said, you're very, very lucky. Don't ever try this again. I happened to then come across Bethany's Weatherby's experience. She was in the States and she also had Kell antibodies, and I found a website that she'd written about her experience, that she was also starting to do some research around about this. She was working with medical professionals, and I was like, wow, okay. And so I was reading about IVIG, that she'd had this, and I was like, wow, okay, what is this even about? At no point was there any patient information available around about HDFN, and my husband and I discussed it and said, if there is a chance, let's try. And I remember having this overwhelming feeling to be a mum again. and to have another baby again, and that had never happened to me before, and it was a really strange feeling. So we had a big long conversation about everything, and it was just a few weeks after this that I then had the conversation with the fetal medicine specialist, and I explained all of this to her, and she said, okay, let me go away and talk with the head of my department and let's see what we can do. And she came back to me and said, we would be willing to offer you IVIG through Glasgow. So it was a big commitment. We are 4 hours away from Glasgow every week to go to Glasgow for IVIG. So we really had to think about it because, you know, we had, you know, there was huge implications for both myself and my husband in terms of our work, in financial terms, because we would need to pay for the journey to go there, come back, potentially somewhere to stay. We would have to think about childcare. It was a very difficult time. I was very, very glad that I had educated myself. What I've seen, you know, we're 11 years on from my first sensitised pregnancy, and I can see how things have changed, and I think the work that's happening now, looking at clinical trials, looking at education, is absolutely fantastic, and it's great to see that. It's great to see that happening, because I think, you know, losing a baby, you don't just lose a baby, you lose hopes and dreams for a future.